Hello, this is Jackie Arendse and I'd like to tell you about an upcoming webinar that I'll be presenting on behalf of the tax faculty, in which I will be deconstructing, dissecting, analyzing the provisional tax legislation. Provisional tax has been around for as long as our income tax system has been around, and I think many of us take many things for granted, but we need to realize that the provisional tax legislation is extremely complex and is very specific, as all tax legislation is. Even if we focus on the definition of exactly who is a provisional taxpayer, we saw this came to a head earlier this year when SARS levied late submission penalties, where people had taken advantage of the tax submission deadline of the end of January that's available to provisional taxpayers, whereas SARS was of the view that they were not provisional taxpayers. So at such a fundamental level to decide whether a person is a provisional taxpayer or not, of course that is crucial in terms of establishing then what the ongoing responsibilities would be if a person is a provisional taxpayer. And so this has really highlighted that the provisional tax system is indeed complicated, even if we looked at the very basic premise of who is a provisional taxpayer and who is not a provisional taxpayer. Of course, there are many other aspects that we need to consider as well. If a person is a provisional taxpayer, what are their obligations? And what are the consequences if those obligations are not fully met in terms of penalties and interest? And so we look at questions around how to determine the estimate of taxable income, especially in changing circumstances. We are in an environment where we don't necessarily see a person's income increasing from year to year. Perhaps it is more erratic than that. In fact, it might even be declining. And so how does one manage the submission of your provisional tax returns in these changing environments? How does one deal with the concept of basic amount and other administrative aspects? What happens if SARS challenges your estimate? What are the taxpayer's rights? What recourse do you have? And of course, if there are penalties and interest, what are the taxpayer's avenues of recourse in those circumstances as well? And of course, the very real issue, what if there's not enough cash to make that provisional tax payment? What routes can the taxpayer take? So I'll be covering all of these aspects and other relevant aspects related to provisional tax. It's a 4-hour webinar, but we're breaking it down into 2 parts of 2 hours each. And so please make sure that you do join me. The first webinar will be on the 19th of July, the second on the 15th of August. And of course, all of the information will be advertised through the tax faculty. All right, so we look forward to seeing you then. And if you have any questions around provisional tax that you would specifically like me to address, please feel free to send those through to the tax faculty. You can log those on the tax faculty website. See you then.